So welcome everyone to Phillips Mill Art Talk. I'm Laura Womack. Jen McHugh, our executive producer, is having a family weekend, so she can't join us on screen, but she is in the audience. Welcome, Jen, and thanks for your little note there. I'm very excited about this Art Talk. It's viewer's choice, and we asked you who you wanted to invite on Art Talk, and you made some great choices. Thank you very much for your feedback. We have three artists with us today. Jan Leipz is a self-taught artist with a long list of accomplishments. He's the 81st Phillips Mill Show's honored artist. He's in our 75th anniversary book. His work is in the Michener's permanent collection, and he's in their artist database. He's participated in many exhibits, has had a lot of media attention, all of that on top of a career as a doctor. Welcome to Art Talk, Jan Leipz.
Thank you. Hi.
Rita Siemienski Smith has a BFA from Moore College of Art and Design, where she maintained a scholarship for 4 years. She too has been in numerous exhibits, including at the Woodmere Art Museum, Philadelphia Sketch Club, and Ellerslie and Trenton. She's been in the Phillips Mill Show many times, winning awards. She's in an impressive number of corporate collections, as well as in the Woodmere collection. Welcome, Rita Siemienski Smith.
Hi.
Luiz Vilela studied architecture and urbanism at Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. While there, he began his career in graphic design. That led him to New York City, where he studied illustration at Pratt Institute. He joined the art department at Random House. He's a frequent exhibitor at Phillips Mill. His work was selected as our 2013 signature image, and he's in the Michener Art Database. His work is in the collection of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Bahia, Brazil. Welcome, Luiz Vilela.
Hi there.
Oh, no.
We're going to approach the show a little bit different today. During the 90-second Juried Art Show, we've been trying to feature as many artists as possible on Art Talk, and that's why we've been tripling up. I hope we can have them all back on their own, because I know we could really explore each of their work in great detail. And we will look at their work tonight. Of course, that's what we love to do on Art Talk. But today we're going to open up the conversation to a chat among artists about how they approach their work styles, their inspiration. And also, this is your show, audience members. You invited these artists here. So I'd like you to be especially participatory and share your questions. I'm going to prioritize your questions tonight, even though I have a ton of questions of my own. And then on a technical note, since I'm on my own here today as host, I really do need you to put your questions into the Q&A. I won't be able to monitor the chat without Jen. And also, please bear with me as I search for slides to support our conversation here. Normally, Jen does that, as you know, but we wanted to give her a well-deserved night off. So, okay, here we go. While you all put your questions into the Q&A, we'll start with a look at our artist works in the 90-second Phillips Mill Juried Art Show. And here's where the challenge comes in, as I see if I can successfully share the presentation. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. These are our artists. And first up, works by Jan Leipz. This is Cloud. And Jan, you and I talked about this a little bit when you were at Meet the Artist. And there's a beautiful story behind this painting. Will you share it with us now?
I'd be happy to. I think it's probably a very common experience. Many years ago, I was on the Jersey Shore, and I was up very early in the morning. It must have been before dawn, 5:30 or so, and I was out on the beach walking in the surf. And it was very dark, totally dark, beautiful sound of the ocean rolling in, some stars up in the sky. And then I saw little glimmers towards the shoreline where the houses were slowly waking up. And I continued to walk on the surf. And the experience of being in the ocean and the sky and the sand and feeling all of that physical sensation on my body and moving through space in that fantastic space was deeply touching to me. I never forgot that experience. And I haven't been able to do that for many years. But with me, a painting begins when nature speaks to me. It speaks out to me and it says, paint me. And this can happen, and I can do the painting the next day. I can sit with it for a month. I can even sit with it in 10 years, for 10 years, as in this case. And the way I see it is that initial being grabbed by some vision is the conception of the painting. And then I'm pregnant with the gestation for God knows how long. And then when the pregnancy reaches fruition, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to execute that painting. And the amount of time that varies in between the conception and the prosecution of the painting it varies greatly. So this painting took about 10 years to come out. It was also initially stimulated by a wonderful painting by Signac of a cloud over a harbor. It was very pointillist in nature. And I never forgot that painting. So that was always in my mind, that cloud, that magnificent cloud. And this is my version of that in conjunction with my wonderful feelings of walking in the surf, which I remember very vividly.
That's a great description of both the process and the painting. And I wonder, Rita and Luis, if you identify with what Jan describes about his process, about the, things coming to you and demanding to be painted. Rita?
Well, since my technique and my inspiration is completely different, but I can appreciate Jan's observance of nature and the feeling of wanting to put it down on canvas. I've had that in the past when I did landscape painting, so I can appreciate that.
Yes,
Yeah.
for me, it reminds me of something that Andrew Wyatt have written or said, maybe in a book that I was reading. They said, how do you get inspired? How do you know a painting is about to be born? He said, oh, I can be walking on a path, and then if I see a sight or something, an image, and I feel goosebumps in my neck, I know I have to paint that. So it's like I relate that to what Jan said. And to me, it's the same thing. When I walk in Lambertville for the first time and I saw the boathouse building, which I like to paint a lot, I thought myself, I have to paint this place to share it.
So, and we'll come back to that, Luis. We've got one of your pictures of the boathouse. And I know that's a sort of an integral part of your story, particularly here, your paintings here in the Bucks County, Lambertville area. But Rita, I want to go back to you too, because you say your technique is very different, but I see, maybe it's just me, but I see so much landscape in your work, even though it's abstract, and we'll show one of your works shortly. But so I just was interested in your comment in that, relating the landscape, because I see you as a landscape painter. Is that wrong?
No, actually, a lot of people feel that way when they see my work. I actually try not to think about the landscape when I start painting. And if it develops into a landscape, I just let it happen. I let the painting direct me rather than try to manipulate what I'm producing. So if the landscape turns up, I go with it.
Right. Very good. Okay. And I note that Jen McHugh, although she is not on as a panelist on this. She's still hard at it, and she has shared a link to the work that Jan was referring to in his commentary. So thank you very much for Jen for that. And I want to go, before we go on, I want to talk a little bit more about Jan, your painting, because I think it has struck, in my experience, it has struck many painters. In particular, I know that one of our other Phillips Mill artists has scheduled himself to be at the mill when you were there so he could talk about it with you. I'm not sure that some of our visitors were able to talk with you while you while you were there, although I'm glad that you had a connection. And I know, Luis, you've said that you admire it as well. So what is it? Maybe Luis, you can talk to us about what is it about being an artist, about this painting in particular, that appeals to you so much from a professional perspective?
I think it's a very powerful piece. As I walked into the show, and there's so many beautiful paintings there. And but when I turned to that little corner that his painting's hanging, I had to stop. I think it's a piece that stops you. Maybe because the composition, to me, is very intriguing. The two pieces of cloud, the way he described the place, and he put these clouds floating in the air, and reminds me of Brazil shore. I go to Bahia a lot. It's a state in Brazil, and it has the same perspective of air with these puffy clouds floating, and the way he built the light on it, and I think it's way more powerful live if you go to the show, and the colors, and you see much more. And I mean, it's a calm, it seems that is a little, it's a calm state and mood, but it's not. I want to know more of it. It looks mysterious somehow to me. So that's why I stopped and tried to understand that.
Well, I love that you say it looks mysteriously, because I wrote down that it has an otherworldly quality, even though it is a very familiar scene. So Jan, what do you think? How do you respond to this description and reaction to your painting? Or you don't have to if you don't want to.
No,
Putting you on the spot.
To me, Luis, to me, very important to me when I was painting this were the values of what I was seeing. I was really concerned with the light of the sand contrasting with the sea, and then the sea further in the distance. And then, of course, all the gradations in the sky. And very much like what Rita was talking about, even though this is not an abstract painting where I have color, shapes, and forms and spaces that have been placed down, and then I'm developing them and working on elements within that thing that's already been laid down. I too am doing something similar in that each area of the painting is being constantly manipulated in terms of color and light and shape. And sometimes things are eliminated and sometimes things are added. But in this painting, I really did follow the same process. I think the abstractionists, the people who paint in an abstractionist vein, such as Rita, and those of us who paint in a more impressionist style or realistic style, as Luis and I do, really are not very different in that when we've got all these shapes and colors and lines on the canvas, whether they're supposed to be representing something real that we can identify, or whether they're shapes and colors that are lovely that we're manipulating, we're always adjusting and manipulating and making judgments about this side of the painting and that side of the painting and the light here and the light there. So we're always modulating this fake two-dimensional thing that we have in front of us. I think the processes are not dissimilar in that regard. I don't know if Rita would take umbrage with that and disagree, or if she would agree, but I think that is true as far as I can tell.
I think no matter what our style is, we're always dealing with the same ideas of where the color, you know, is it whether it's light or dark or line, or we're all dealing with the same elements. And it's funny, when I was looking at your painting, I felt I try to get an emotion when something stops me, and I felt that your painting was both mysterious and lonely. I felt a sense of being just by myself, and I don't know whether you intended that, you know, with your representation.
Thank you for saying that. Both the original experience long time ago on the beach in the dark, and the painting of this painting are essentially solitary feelings. I wouldn't say lonely, but alone.
Alone.
Which is not pejorative in any way. I mean, being alone is absolutely wonderful. Most of us artists would agree. I mean, we need people and we need to be out there in the world also, but we really need to be alone and, you know, do our work. And yes, when I was painting this, I was reliving that time as I painted. I was in that world. You couldn't really disturb me. I was on the beach walking, and it was alone, being alone, solitude, but the beauty of it, not anything that was negative or pejorative. It was beautiful, and I think I hope the silence and the tranquility of that scene does come through, because I felt that very strongly.
To me, looking at those clouds reminds me when the pandemic started last year. I was in my hometown in Brazil, and I was stuck there for a while, but there is a lake in my town. And one of the days that nobody was walking the street, and I went to the lake because I was at home in my sister's house all the time. So when I was in the lake, I saw the lake, the water, and these clouds suspended up in the air. And to me, life was suspended at that moment because of the pandemic. It stops. And it has a little bit of that feeling, your painting, also of suspension, something waiting to happen, but it paused.
Right. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's go then to your painting, Luiz, because I think there's definitely a strong aspect of light to that as well. And here's the technical challenge. I'm going to try to share that with you all. All right. Here we go. Can we see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. And so there's Luiz with his work. And here we go. Also talking about the quality of light, which is very strong in this. Brings such a quality of blue, which is a totally, in a way, different palette than in Jan's painting. And also, Luiz, you and Jan were talking about being struck by something that you just felt you needed to paint.
Yes, it's right. I got this idea. Of course, I painted that scene from a photograph. I couldn't go there. I was not there. I painted this 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And I have a friend who lives in Paris, Rodrigo. He works for a company there, Louis Vuitton, I think, and he photographs very well. And he has a page on Instagram. And I was seeing the pictures that he was taking, beautiful all the time. And I saw that scene of Paris and I got the goosebumps and I said, I had to paint this. And let me see. And I sent him a message, said, Rodrigo, can I paint that scene, that image? He said, of course. And I love Paris. And we couldn't move, we couldn't travel, we couldn't do anything. It's been more than a year that I was here in my studio working all by myself. And I decided to, well, it took a lot of work because I had to enlarge from an Instagram picture like this big. And I enlarged the piece, the image, and then I had to transfer my drawing to the canvas, and I had to do on the floor because it's a very large piece for me, 35 inches square. And I'm painting mostly smaller sizes now and medium. But it was a journey, and it felt to me that I was traveling there. I said, well, if I can go to France, I can travel to France, to Paris, I can make Paris come visit me. And I spent a month in those streets. And what mostly intrigued me by the image, it was Paris, the architecture and the holes that they have on the blocks, and you see windows. Who lives there? Who lives there? And I asked my friend, where did you get that image from? I think he said it was at the top floor of a new hotel in Paris called Cheval Blanc, and at the President Suite. Probably he went there and photographed that. And it depicts the river scene, right? And the tower in the back. And one of the last time I visited Paris, I was in a Hotel Regina, which is just next to the Louvre on the Rivoli Street. And I had similar views that you could see the Eiffel Tower every 7 p.m. It was blinking. It was beautiful. So I said, and I have friends also in America, 2 artists that they painted Paris from above the Montmartre hill, and has that kind of feeling like the movie Ratatouille, the Disney cartoon. So that's the motif, the inspiration for me to work in a very intricate piece. And the light, of course, people always comment on my work about the use of light and shadows. And it was I think it's a beautiful sunset that he captured in the image. Yeah. But I distorted the colors it's much more bluer than it is in the picture.
So that actually, one of the visitors I overheard when I was tea hosting was saying that there's a lot of blue, and difficult to use so much blue in a painting. And I just thought that was such an unusual comment, because I wasn't part of the conversation. I didn't have the privilege of following up on it, but I kind of want to throw that out to the three of you. Does that make sense to you, or should we move on past the use of blue?
I'd like to make a comment about green, if I might.
Sure.
Somebody once came into my studio while I was painting and said, there's just too much green. There's too much green. And that comment in the studio really got under my skin. And I had to think for green after that. You have to be careful when you call something like that out. I mean, one never knows how the artist is going to feel about it, especially if the painting's in process. I agree that the blue in Luis's painting is wonderfully done. I really think it's just beautiful. I agree with the comments about light. In fact, being the city of light, which you know well, and I know very well, the light comes out in that painting, not only in the sky and the sun, but in the right bank of all those houses that you have with their mansard roofs, the light of those buildings comes out. And in Paris, all of the buildings exude a light. They're all the same color. They're cream colored building. That's de rigueur in Paris. So with
Yes.
the cream color reflects the light from the sky, and it gives the whole city a wonderfully bright feeling. Even until 10 o'clock at night, you can sometimes see almost like daylight. It's just so light. And that comes across in your painting. I love the architectural aspects of your painting, Luis. I know that you were at one point an architect, and
Yeah.
that certainly comes through, and your love of line and shape really works beautifully. And I can see that influence very heavily in your painting.
Thank
Great
you
painting.
for saying.
Great painting.
Just want to
Thank
be
you very much.
clear that the person was not criticizing that. They thought it was very successful. And the painting, I've seen the painting stop people from across the room. So it's a very successful painting, just to be clear, if I wasn't clear about that before. Rita, what do you think of the reaction to blue? It just strikes me as very odd. Or maybe there's something else you want to say about the painting.
No, I think the blue is absolutely beautiful in that painting, and the abstract feeling of those rooftops really grabbed me. I just got lost in all of those shapes and the linear feeling. I just think it's a marvelous painting, and the blue is, I can't imagine the painting without it. I mean, that blue is beautiful.
I'm just thinking now, blue is my favorite color. I didn't think about that before. Now you brought to my mind that, yeah.
So, and not to get too hung up on it, but of course, color is so important for painting. I mean, that's foundational, right? But Jim adds that Paris roofs are mostly red. So there's sort of another perspective for you. He adds, it's great painting and loves the detail. So there you go. I don't know if you have a response to that or a comment. Let's see.
Are you entering your blue period now, Luis?
Actually, I am. If you see in the back, look, a lot of blues there. I'm painting a lot of images of Provincetown and the ocean, and so it's all blue.
Right. So now I'm going to skip ahead actually to Rita. I'm going to share the painting, one of the paintings that you have in the show. But I kind of, since we're talking about light and color, I'd like to share, if I might, this work of yours. Whoops, there we go. Close to home, 30 by 30, because I think it's interesting both for color and light. I recommend to anyone who goes to the show to go check out the Meet the Artists and talk to the artists who are in residence, because you learn all sorts of wonderful things. And one thing, a very well-known artist in the area told me that paintings are successful and painters are successful when they understand that what they're painting is not an object, but light. And for me, as a lay person without the background, I think this has both the color and the light quality. Rita, what do you think?
Well, this painting was a series. I did a series of 6 paintings. I was commissioned actually to do 4 paintings, a 30 by 30 canvas, and that was the only limitation I had. And they suggested that it had that the paintings would have a landscape feeling, but they didn't care how definite or how loose, or, I mean, it was a wonderful commission. And out of the 6, they picked 4, and they were all different. I mean, I really tried to push them so that they didn't all look like they were part of a group. I wanted each one to stand by itself and have its own voice. And as this was developing, I decided to have a red sky. And then after I put the sky in, I decided it needed to be cut in half. And I envisioned the background as trees. I envisioned water, sky, and of course the foreground was landscape. But that was my approach.
Rita, how do you start your work, your paintings? I asked you before last week, but I would like to ask you again. And I think it's fascinating when somebody works abstractly. And I would like to know what moves you to start a piece.
Well, actually, I am very fast painter. I work in acrylic, which means I can layer a lot of different colors on the canvas and scrape through them. I like to see what's underneath another color by scraping through. I add many layers on top, and that's basically how I start. And when I finish, it takes me a long time to look to know when I'm finished. I paint quickly, and the process evolves. And the longest part of the painting is looking at it and making sure that it's what I want to say.
Do you change? The result? Do you change a lot in the process? Because I guess when you abstract, yeah, I know you have a goal to pursue, but does it vary in the middle of the way you change? It ever ends finish different when you were thinking before you start?
I think the painting really evolves by itself. The more color I put on and the more scraping I do and the more layering, the painting starts to reveal itself to me. And I let the painting tell me and direct me as to where it's going and when it's finished. So it's a intuitive process.
So I think, and one thing that Luis is referring to is, Rita, you told in the conversation earlier with Luis and Jan, you said that when you go to paint, unlike as Jan and Luis has described before, rather than having something that came to you and said that it wanted to be painted, you go in with an empty mind, which I think is a terrifying prospect.
Well, I paint without fear, that's for sure. And to me, every painting is a challenge. It's a discovery. It's magic. To me, painting is like an act of creation that evolves as you're working. And I liken it to cooking a meal. You start with ingredients and you make something out of it, and you present it, and it's a completed finish. When I'm making a painting, I'm adding ingredients, and hopefully when it's finished, it's successful. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that doesn't bother me at all, because some of those failures, or so-called failures, become more challenging, and I end up producing something that is completely unexpected, because I can have no fear of starting again, or starting into another color that I didn't plan to use, and it's magic to me.
Rita,
Yes.
if I may say so, I perused your work on your website, and I have to tell you that I adore your work. I think your work is truly magnificent.
Oh, thank you.
And me too.
That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is I think that Luis and you and I are talking about what I call the internal logic of a painting.
Mhm.
When you've reached a certain point in your painting, you're looking at it, and it's got to have its own internal logic. The colors have to be working together in a certain way. The light has to be placed so that it also works with the color and the shapes. It's an internal logic that the painting itself has. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but I think the way I think about it is not dissimilar from Luis or you, Rita. The last thing I wanted to say was, in that particular painting, which I think is a magnificent painting, with the wonderful green fields of color predominating, and then the red in the background, red sky and the red hills. This, of course, is this goes against the rules, Rita. You're not supposed to have brighter colors in the background. Didn't they teach you that? One would expect those hills and one would expect that sky to be blue or a cooler color that recedes into the distance. Well, Rita's pulled a trick on us, and she's put the foreground colors, she's made the foreground colors proper, as one would think. But when we get to the red part of the painting, we say to ourselves, well, wait a minute, isn't that supposed to be going back into the distance? Isn't that supposed to be paler colors that fade away from that bright green? Well, I'm thinking in the traditional way of how I work my paintings. Rita has very boldly substituted a hot color. It's so exciting in the background of this painting. And it's against the rules, isn't it? But it really works. And that's mysterious to me too. I think it's just beautiful. And this makes my mind bounce around between abstraction and realism. I'm seeing a realistic landscape here, but I'm also seeing an abstract landscape here. And I've got elements of both. And it's a wonderful, exciting boomerang around the painting that I experience. And I just want to congratulate you. I think it's great.
Well,
But it's
thank
a
you.
brilliant analysis. And but she is a fierce woman. She's brave, and she'll do it.
We need her as president.
Yeah.
Wow, there you go, Rita. What do you?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't want that challenge.
All right, so now I had someone raise their hand. Jen, I need you. Someone raised their hand. If you had a question, please type it into the Q&A where I can find it. And while that person, I hope, is putting that in there, let's go forward. I did want to show Rita's painting in the show this time. Jen, we're going to have you back soon, I hope. Here we go. Okay. And here we go. Shoreline. Rita, would you like to say something about shoreline?
Well, actually, this painting was painted upside down. And what you see in the foreground were actually clouds. And the more I painted it, the more I decided that it was really water. And it was reflection of clouds in the water. And the background was the landscape in the distance. So quite often, you know, paintings surprise me as I'm painting them because, as I said, I don't really try to have an intention when I'm painting, and the painting tells me what it's going to be. But this one was unusual in that I turned it upside down and I thought it was a much better painting.
That's wonderful. I don't think that happens to Jan or Luis. You haven't had a painting go upside down on you. So what, Jan, Luis, when I was talking with Luis, he was admiring how deliberate your strokes are. And I think Rita's story about how the painting surprises her. Are you ever surprised, Jan, when you're painting by what emerges?
Yes, I am surprised by what emerges. I'm surprised by what emerges when it's right. That's what surprises me most. Because of my situation, I have to, as the word deliberate was used, and I have to confess that because of my inability to use anything except my left non-dominant arm. That's all I can use. When I used to draw a great deal as a youngster, I was extremely strong right-handed dominant, but as you can see, my right arm doesn't look too great. And when I started painting, I couldn't use my right dominant arm. I had to teach myself. I've had no training. I had to teach myself to use my left arm, my non-dominant arm. To this day, gives me trouble signing my name, but I can paint. Now, I just want to indicate to you that in terms of being careful, because of my instability and my inability to control a lot of my body, I have to try to be deliberate as much as possible. And perhaps I overcompensate to try to make myself feel like I'm more in control because of my uncontrollable body. I think this is one of the reasons that my strokes tend to be deliberate. When I begin a painting, I look at the painting and I have to make a few marks, a few points on the painting. That kind of delineates where everything's going to be. I have to put a little mark to delineate where the cloud's going to be before it hits the edge of the canvas. I have to put a little mark to indicate where the ocean line is going to be. So I have to do this very carefully, because if I don't, I really won't have control at all when I'm painting, and I'm not going to know where things are going. So that deliberateness maybe is showing through in some of the brush strokes and some of the other aspects of the painting, but control is unfortunately quite necessary for me. I can't just let myself go, or at least I personally have not learned how to do that because of the desire and need to control my body as much as possible, since it's so uncontrollable. I hope that makes sense at all.
It's what makes your pieces unique also. I love it. This Lewis Island, I paint that house all the time, and it's a beautiful piece. And I love the way you put all these pieces together. You know, your brush strokes, your marks, that is an extension of your brain or your movements. It's really beautiful.
This is this is an incredible achievement of this painting. It just is breathtaking. And then it's got everything. It's got the light and the composition and that deliberateness. And yet it is, you know, a very natural picture of a lovely spot, Jan.
Absolutely breathtaking. I know every inch of that scene.
Yeah, my head's getting bigger and bigger. Go beyond the screen here in a minute. Thank you.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Are you painting from, are you photographing and using it as inspiration, or are you painting on site? How are you?
Okay, this is typical. This painting is typical. There's a little tiny parking lot right by this area, and the canal sits right beyond the parking lot, and then the island sits right there with the boathouse and the skulls. So I've painted this scene many times, and what I have done is I've always come up and I've done sketches of it, trying to delineate the major lines. And I have done a couple of watercolor studies with it as well. I do take a photograph. That photograph is for reference. I started out as a plein air painter. That's all I did. Why? Because I thought that's the way painters painted. I didn't know anything. I wasn't lucky enough to go to art school. I missed out on that. So everything was self-taught here. And when I began painting, it was strictly outside with the assistance of my wife or friends who would set me up, and then I could paint for a few hours undisturbed. But at this point in time, I have had evolved into a studio painter. Why? Good God. If I could show you my studio, all the paints are there, the easel's right here, the lights are there, everything is very controlled. And again, with the need for control, I began to find that studio painting was much better for me. I always wasn't dropping brushes on the ground, which I couldn't reach. And I wasn't getting paint all over the place and not being able to, clean up a little bit so the paint didn't get all over the place. So I became a studio painter, and as a result, to long-winded answer to your question, Rita, it's a combination of all those elements that I utilize in the studio, the studies, the photograph, the sketches, and that's what I utilize as reference for the painting that I'm about to do. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the extraordinarily strong feeling that I got from that scene repeatedly and painted it again and again and again, that strong feeling, I can image it right now. I can see it in my head. It's so familiar to me. And the degree of emotion I feel towards that scene, especially when the skulls used to be out, really was important in helping me to conceptualize and actually start to put the paint on the canvas. I don't know if that answers your question. I tried the best I could.
I want to show, we're talking about the deliberateness of the work on occasion. And Luis, I know you can also be very deliberate, not because you've told me that, because when I look at this painting, it's amazing. And I sort of see it from the top down. I mean, I immediately look at the fur where the light hits it, and then, which is an amazing accomplishment. And then looking at this gentleman's, the quality of the skin is extraordinary. And then it loosens up as you go down. It's a fascinating picture, Luis.
Yes, that's, thank you very much. That's a painting of a friend of mine. He became my friend. I met him at the gallery, Jim's Antiques here. He was serving champagne. And at the time, I was showing my work with Liz Deschamps from Deschamps Gallery across the street. And I was at the party, at the opening party there at Jim's, and I was looking for somebody to paint, a model. And I saw this guy passing the champagne, and I look at Liz, I said, I think I found my model. I'm gonna talk to him. And he came to the studio, my studio later, and we were doing a lot of, he was sitting here in the corner, and we're working on a piece. And in the break time for him to rest, I switched the light and I saw him in profile. And then my partner, John, has a fur hat. And I said, wait a minute, let me put this fur hat and see how it looks against a dark background and a strong light coming from the top. It was beautiful. And then we started working on that painting. And it took me a little while to finish. I start live, which Jan said that is the ideal when you paint live, because all your answers are in front of you when you're painting live. The photograph lies to you, and if you don't have a lot of skills and work, I forgot the word, experience, you make mistakes if you want to do a truthful color thing, because the photograph lies, and then if you print, it lies again, the printer. So the colors are always distorted, especially in shadow. And when I start going to study in Caminati in Philadelphia to practice painting in that Nelson Schenck school, they taught me a lot about color, because Nelson was a colorist. And so my paint evolved a lot after I took classes in Caminati. with the teachers there. And then, yes, and I like the interplay between shadows and light, dark scenes, mysterious. I love that. And it was a very successful piece. It was on the Phillips mill. I got in a long time ago with that painting there. And since then, I've been painting Donald a lot. I painted his wife, his ex-wife, and I really like painting people. And I don't know if I have a style, if I can elaborate a little bit. My art is like representation, and you call realism. I know that in contemporary art, there's always a concern to search for like social commentary. I don't do social commentary in my paintings. It's usually contemporary art likes that, and to make people, I think paintings like profound. What I'm looking for, it's beauty. I look for beauty I came to this world, and
Oh, it's okay. Take a minute.
yeah, I see people, I like people, and I want to paint them. And I go to places and I paint places and that I like, that I think it meant to me. And I paint the landscape where I live, and I paint the river. And I heard somebody saying once, like, oh, it's one more painting of the river. Well, yes, it's one more painting of the river. There is Luiz Vilela painting of the river. Redfield have done beautifully. Daniel Garber, Lathrop, they all have done their time painting on the river, and they did beautifully. Now it's my time, it's Rita's time, it's Jan's time to paint the river if we feel like. What else I was going to say? I got emotion.
Got a minute. We're going
Sorry
to give
about
you
that.
a minute, Luis, and then we come back to you, because I think you gave us a great lead in. Jan, Luis is looking for beauty. He doesn't want to make a political commentary. What is it that you're painting? What is that you want to share with us when you paint?
I relate very much to, by the way, first thing I have to say is stunning.
Yes.
That
Thank
painting
you.
is
Incredible.
stunning. The composition of that painting is really marvelous. And the light, of course, has been discussed. It's just a stunning painting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, Jen.
No, Laura, I don't think about political things or social things. Like Luis, I want to make my world into my world. And that world is going to be as beautiful as it can be. That's what I'm trying to do with my painting, is to make beauty as much as I can, whatever beauty is. That's what my goal is. I don't have any other ulterior motives. The painting is not always talking to me about beauty and me talking to the painting about beauty. We're like mechanics. We're down in the garage under the car. We're working on color adjustment and shapes and light and how they relate to each other, so that painting does achieve its own internal logic, as I call it. But the end result for me, if it's successful, is beauty. I want you to look at the painting. I want to look at the painting and say, wow, I pass that 3,000 times a day, but look at it. I don't really see it. Look at that image. I want the image that we take for granted to become the extraordinary thing that it really is in life. So like Luis, I think we have similar goals in that regard.
Rita?
Yeah, there is a saying by Bill Cunningham. He was a reporter at the New York Times. He said, who seeks beauty will find it. And well, yeah, that's what I I strive for, you know. And it is interesting because then you record the places that you've been to, and you show the world places. And it's interesting because last week, a student of mine in Brazil saw my paint, was talking to me, and he said, Luiz, I've never been to United States or Lambertville, and I don't know the boathouse, never been, but through your paintings, I feel I know the place, you know. I experienced a little bit of the looks, and it was, if I could make that, you know, bring beauty to people and make them travel, like I like to travel to Paris through my painting, then okay, I'm doing something that to me is right.
Right. Rita, what are you communicating? What are you telling us in your paintings?
Well, hopefully, I hope that my love of color, my love of texture and emotion. I think all of us have a way of putting our personalities into our work, and I think the landscape that Jen paints is very personal to him, and I feel like I know him through his painting. And Luiz, that portrait just absolutely stunned me. It was just incredible. I wonder how the model, what he thought of it, because I just the darks hidden, his eyes hidden under the dark, and that and how easily you painted that shirt. It was such a, you know, aggressive way, without putting detail of thread, which you could have done, but you put the detail in that hat. I mean, just that painting was as abstract to me as any painting I've ever done.
If you see, if you look at the bottom of the painting, it is really abstraction.
I know.
And even the colors, because there is the shade. I was seeing green in the shade because it was a warm, light yellow hitting his t-shirt. It was a white t-shirt, but I paint the white t-shirt with yellow color for the light and green for the shadows to compensate a little bit the preciseness of the hat. And one woman asked me, how did you paint that fur? I said, with the worst brush that I had. There were 4 pieces of hair. And I tossed, after I painted, I had to put in the garbage.
Did you ever use a palette knife? Because I almost feel that the shirt looked like you might have used a knife with that.
I don't remember, but I don't think I used palette knife. I think it was brush stroke.
Okay.
And I learned, that's when at that time, I started studying with David Lefebvre, who used to teach at Art Student League, now lives in Taos, New Mexico. And he's one of my mentors, and he strives for the brushstroke to the mark that you leave on canvas. And that's my preoccupation nowadays, is how I construct the brushwork in my paintings more than the image. And so I was really looking for that expression, you know,
Well,
the mark.
that's how I felt when I saw that the bottom part. It was painted so differently from the face.
Yes,
but it needed that.
It was intention. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, 3 extraordinary artists. I wish we could go on and on. Clearly, you all could have lots more to share with each other. Please come back and share with us. We'd like to look at each of your bodies of work in greater detail. Jan Leipz, Rita Siemienski-Smith, Luiz Vilela, thank you all very much for joining us on Art Talk.
Thank you for having us here. I feel honored to share such a wonderful conversation with 2 brilliant painters and you yourself, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luiz.
Coming up next on Art Talk, November 7th, we have the jurors for the Emerging Playwrights Competition from Phillips Mill. They're a diverse group with lots to share. I'm looking forward to that conversation. We also have on November 14th, artist David Steer, whose atmospheric paintings seem to have a story to tell. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. Thank all of you in the audience for joining us tonight, and thank you for your excellent viewers' choices. We'll be doing viewers' choices again. We loved it. Thank you to the Phillips Mill Art Talk team, Jen McHugh, executive producer. She'll be back live with us next time. Dennis Riley and Jean Mahich, our content producers. For Phillips Mill Community Association, I'm Laura Womack. Good night.